that I cannot use both computers now for some reason, so I can't see the lecture itself. And let's see how I can do this.
Microphone, please.
Yeah. Never mind. It's just for the Hebrew text, and I have the translation, so I'll read it out loud. Yeah. Okay. So I'll go over there. You can see if it will work. Okay. So. It was crazy. So, if one is a Kabbalist, can one also support philosophy? Apparently, for Rabbi Shmuel Menachem Yeshua Adeni, the author of Nachalat Yosef, it is not merely possible, but even desirable. For that is what he says when he describes the class of the perfect Jewish sages. It elevates and raises the banner of belief and philosophy, perfect belief and rational investigation, piety and rational criticism, all consolidating in its spirit, so much so we can justly call it three inclusive names: distinctive rabbis, true Kabbalists, and enlightened intellectuals, for it learns a lesson from them all interchangeably. The problem is that in Nachalat Yosef, Rabbi Shmuel seems to be a staunch opponent of philosophy and rational investigation. If so, how could Rabbi Shmuel describe the perfect Jewish sage as a supporter of philosophy and rational investigation? I'll try discussing this problem using some telling examples from Rabbi Shmuel's book, but first I want to say a few words about the book and its author. Rabbi Shmuel was born in Aden in 1862 and died there probably in 1912. He was one of the last prominent figures of the intellectual history of Adenite and Yemenite Jewry. He was an autodidact, learning from a vast Hebrew Haskalah literature to be found in Aden at the time. His book Nachalat Yosef was first published in Jerusalem in 1906 or 1907. It was probably the first book heavily influenced by the Jewish European Enlightenment literature produced by this community. Nonetheless, and despite the book's interesting and important content in various areas, the book and its author remained almost unknown outside of the Adenite Jewish community. Apart from very sporadic mentions in academic and rabbinic literature, I have not found any study of this book. This is indeed an unfortunate oversight, which we must try to correct. The main designation of the book was, at first, to be a textbook for pupils teaching the foundations of Judaism, as well as basic modern education in areas such as astronomy, physics, biology, mathematics, geography, etc. These are the main contents of the first part of the book. The second part of the book, written or edited later, has a much more personal nature. This part deals with the special halachic customs of the Adenite Jewry, some personal family history of the author, the story of his travels to the land of Israel, some poems he wrote, and even a collection of witty anecdotes he collected. Naturally, from the point of view of Jewish thought and philosophy, my focus will be on the first, more general and philosophical part of the book, rather than the second, more individual and halachic. As for Rabbi Shmuel's sources, I do not have the time to elaborate. I will only say that A, he had access to no shortage of Hebrew Enlightenment literature. As Mehalel Ha'adani said, here you will find any book you like in abundance, as if Warsaw Printing House resides in Aden. B, he was heavily influenced by this literature. As I mentioned, I've already identified some of his many sources. Indeed, being a Kabbalist, Rabbi Shmuel continues the tradition of many Jewish thinkers from Yemen and outside of Yemen, for whom Kabbalah played a fundamental role in their worldview. However, I think that to better understand the problem at hand, it is important to pay attention to Rabbi Shmuel's historical account of Kabbalah and its methodical, overwhelming implication. In his introduction, Rabbi Shmuel points out that this magnificent wisdom, namely Kabbalah, is very ancient, for without it we cannot understand the intention of the Holy Torah, because it is much beyond us. We already sense a polemical aspect against those who claim that Kabbalah is not part of the ancient Jewish tradition. In order to refute this notion, the 7th chapter of Nahalat Yosef, titled Summary of the Principles of Kabbalah, starts with a historical account of Jewish mysticism. Rabbi Shmuel takes after the first Mishnah in Tractate Avot. Moses received the Torah from Sinai and delivered it to Joshua, and Joshua to the elders, and the elders to the prophets, and the prophets delivered it to the members of the Great Assembly. He presents his historical account of the transmission of Kabbalah accordingly in great accurate detail. At first, he states that Kabbalah was already delivered by Moses to Joshua, alongside the written Torah, as part of the oral Torah. After being transmitted to the elders, it was transmitted to the prophets, such as Eli, Shmuel, Eliyahu, and Elisha. Regarding the prophet, Rabbi Shmuel establishes their affinity to Kabbalah on the miracles they perform. It is easy to see how Rabbi Shmuel shapes the term Torah, presented in the first Mishnah of Tractate Avot, as to include Kabbalah. Hence, Kabbalah is an inseparable part of the oral Torah mentioned in Tractate Avot. He goes on, listing important works such as Hechalot literature, Shiur Koma, and the Book of the Bahir, which he designates as books including the wisdom of Elohut, metaphysics, not to be valued by gold and not to be contained by any intelligent mind. He mentions Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the circle of Zohar writers, though in short, initial, enigmatic form. From Rashbi and later on, the manifestation of Elijah becomes the central element in the rediscovery of the ancient ideas of Kabbalah that were forgotten, then re-established. That is very important, for Elijah's manifestation revealing the secrets of the Kabbalah to the various sages from Rashbi onwards, allows the new developments in Kabbalah to be considered as revelation and rediscovery rather than invention. The next link is the work of the Geonim, who, as Rabbi Shmuel says, gave the Zohar its known familiar form, that is, divided according to the order of the Torah passages, adding some marginalia, later to be inserted by copyists to the text. He goes on to mention the Kabbalah sages of Provence and Gerona, such as Rabbi Yitzchak Sagi Nahor, Nachmanides, and others. Then, argues Rabbi Shmuel, disagreements regarding Kabbalah start to emerge. The last link in the chain were Rabbi Moshe Cordovero and the Ari, described as those who eliminated these disagreements. Rabbi Shmuel concludes that his detailed survey in the following words. That is why it is named Kabbalah, for it is truly Kabbalah, meaning to receive in Hebrew. Man, from Moses, from Sinai. To conclude, Rabbi Shmuel's position is that Kabbalah is an inseparable part of the transmitted oral Torah and therefore must be inherently true. Hence, any notion contradicting Kabbalah actually contradicts the Torah. Since no competing outlook can challenge the belief in the Torah, Kabbalah included, Kabbalah always overcomes philosophy and any other conclusion of the human intellect. Such a position easily explains Rabbi Shmuel's harsh attacks upon philosophy. While criticizing Maimonides, Rabbi Shmuel goes on to attack rational inquiry itself. As we know, Maimonides points out in his guide that if there was absolute rational apodictic demonstrative proof supporting the eternity of the world, then we would have to accept the absolute conclusion of reason in this matter. Rabbi Shmuel answers Maimonides, and I knew that anyone clinging to Baal Peor, which is the human investigation undertaken by Aristotle and his evil disciples, does not come out of it in peace, but with false and distorted opinions, and it almost leads to heresy. See, who's greater than Maimonides? And I, dust at his legs, say, even if he will bring us thousands of demonstrative proofs, we will not assent nor give heed to him in this matter. For not even one letter of the Torah will be dropped because of the demonstrative proofs. For our holy Torah is far superior to all demonstrative proofs in the world. Did you see that the logic of the rational theoretical investigation, which is walking on wings of wind, turns man from one end to the other? It is fitting for man to flee from it like from a snake. Therefore, the bards justly say that the minority of Ralbag's writing are true, and most of them are, etc. He didn't want to say false. And what Maimonides said in the guide is mostly close to the truth. And what the Kuzari said is all true. This is the principal stance. even when philosophy has absolute demonstrative proofs, we would not adhere to those proofs. This stance is based on Rabbi Shmuel's notion of Kabbalah as an inherent part of the divine superior Torah. Therefore, it cannot be challenged by any conclusion of the inferior human intellect. As a result, he can harshly attack philosophy, which is, after all, a collection of conclusions based on human deliberations and not divine revelation. Just to mention one example, let's see how he attacks philosophy and philosophers when he explains the purpose of the 14th chapter of his book, titled Summary of the Criticism of Rational Investigation. Now, and I quote, "Now I need to turn to block the mouths of the unlawful wiseacres of philosophy, for many apostatizing people are coming now from far away, from abroad, and I was afraid of the wrath of those vipers, lest they will cast their venom on the youngsters of our people in our country as well." Here I wish to ask again, if so, how the perfect sage raises the banner of belief and philosophy, perfect belief and rational investigation. The question is not merely theoretical, because it seems that Rabbi Shmuel goes to great effort to just present, not just to present his readers with the summaries of the great latest achievements in physics, biology, geography, astronomy, etc. But he also defends the need to learn the sciences, which are, after all, the fruit of the human investigation and deliberations, and not divine revelation. In order to try and to answer this question, I wish to stress two important points. The first is the distinction between rationalism and rationality, which Professor Benjamin Abramov well expressed, characterizing theologians in Islam as follows. The term rationalism must be distinguished from rationality, which means treating any issue by using reason, but without giving reason priority. Rationality turns to rationalism when reason is prior to revelation. The second point is the fact that Rabbi Shmuel actually deals with the philosophers' opinions, and mostly he rejects what they cannot prove, and what, as it seems to him, they will never be able to prove. Therefore, it is very easy for him to reject any metaphysical conjectures of the philosophers, and instead to accept the metaphysical Kabbalistic system over philosophical metaphysics without abandoning the intellect. In other words, this way he can still remain rational, if not a rationalist. Let's see how this is implemented in the 14th chapter of the book, titled, as mentioned above, Summary of the Criticism of Rational Investigation. First, Rabbi Shmuel says that he read thousands of Hebrew Haskalah books. He admits that he learned much from these books. He also makes a rational opening statement saying that Haskalah is not an enemy of the Torah, and that we can benefit from intellectual investigation. Then he turns to discuss the contents of Haskalah books and their authors. Indeed, he does argue that if we are sure that the author follows Greek philosophy, then we must bury the book. And if the author is a heretic, even burn it. Nonetheless, in practice, he calls the readers to be careful and not hastily judge the author, and in any case, to be selective and accept what is not contradictory to the Jewish tradition. This way, as he puts it, following many before him, the Torah is the mistress, and philosophy and human intellectual investigation are its servants. Then he goes on to classify the maskilim. The first group are of those who follow both theoretical and practical philosophy. Hence, they deny the principle of Jewish traditions such as creation, revelation, Mount Sinai, etc. As a result of their heresy, they alienate themselves from both the Jewish tradition and the Jewish people, so much so there is no merit in any dealings with them whatsoever. The second are those who accept the Torah only when it does not contradict philosophy. That is the opposite of what Rabbi Shmuel believes in. Anyway, he states that no such heretical Jews, kimat afilu apikoros echad, exist in Aden or in inner Yemen. The third group does not prefer Torah over philosophy or philosophy over Torah, for they think they are equal. Their problem is that they do not believe in the existence of the angels and spirits, etc. They do not follow the halakha, saying that it is only relevant for the masses, not for the intelligent elite, those who deliberate themselves with the philosophy and metaphysics of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and Leibniz. As a model for this group, he mentions Solomon Maimon. He tells a story of his life emphasizing his philosophy, emphasizing how philosophy destroyed his belief. The fourth group is the group of those who turn away from Greek philosophy, believing in the new current modern philosophy. Here he makes 2 points. The first is that they are right to abandon the ancient philosophy, but they are not right to fully accept the new philosophy. The second is that both are based on conjecture. These are his telling words. The fourth group turned away from ancient philosophy, seeing how many ancient philosophies that were held by almost all ancient intellectuals were ruined. Indeed, they strictly follow the new philosophy of the current intellectuals, saying that only the new philosophy follows logic and reason. But we found that in spite of the great advancement and progress of the sciences in our time, philosophy is still lame, and lame it shall be until the end of time. For all of what the philosophers say in metaphysics, they cannot prove by demonstrative scientific proofs, because all of what they say in metaphysics are merely conjectures based on nothing. The fifth group is the fewest. This group turns to philosophy, rational investigation, and halakha only after extensive rabbinical and Kabbalistic studies, with its mind alert and ready to fight any heresy it may well find in philosophy. These are those who elevate and raise the banner of belief and philosophy, perfect belief and rational investigation, etc. One must add that Rabbi Shmuel recognizes that this ideal characterization is almost impossible, for naturally people have different characters and minds. Some tend to Talmud, and some tend to mysticism, and some to philosophy and rational investigation. Each party also criticizes the others. Therefore, as he does regarding several issues in his book, and this may well be a topic for another lecture, he gives the idyllic theoretical goal a more practical, flexible, and pluralist expression. He allows Talmudic rabbis, Kabbalists, and Maskilim to follow their own natural tendencies on the condition that they acknowledge and respect each other under the shared Orthodox Jewish belief. To conclude, A. Rabbi Shmuel was an autodidact with pedagogical aspirations, trying to endow the pupils in his community with enlightened and broad education. Rabbi Shmuel's criticism of philosophy is focused on philosophical metaphysics, the most problematic branch of philosophy when it comes to the relation with religion. Specifically, philosophical metaphysics undermines Kabbalah, which is an inherent part of the Torah, offering an alternative metaphysical worldview which he must accept. Other than that, not much in philosophy and rational investigation contradicts Jewish tradition, and it sometimes even supports tradition, and therefore using philosophy is not only permissible, but even desirable. In this sense, Rabbi Shmuel can indeed be designated as a rational thinker, though not as a rationalist one. These are the foundations on which Rabbi Shmuel builds his worldview regarding the perfect Jewish sage. Nevertheless, the model of the ideal perfect Jewish sage is almost beyond reach. Therefore, the more practical and flexible call of Rabbi Shmuel to the Talmudic rabbis, the Kabbalists, and the Maskilim is to live peacefully and amicably under one God, recognizing each other's positive value. This is a lesson we all can learn from.
Okay.